But let's get to that DAZN card on October 6th, which definitely is not the greatest, to put it lightly. But Jared Miller versus Thomas Adamek, Jesse Vargas versus Thomas Dulorme, and Artabebi versus Callum Johnson. The Callum Johnson Artabebi fight, I think, was already announced. Look, I know, like Rob saying, like Granados was the target but turned it down. Like that wouldn't even have been that great, to be quite honest. And I know that their sticking point is that we have all these title fights. Daniel Roman will be on the card against Gavin McDonald as well. I believe I've been hearing that the Cindy Serrano, Katie Taylor fight's been moved to the October 20th card, which we'll get to later. So I don't know if that one's officially moved or not. Maybe Rob can let me know in the chat. But it's a shit card. Like, it's not good. Like, it's when you compare it to, let's say, PBC, because again I think PBC is the ultimate comparison, and everyone's comparing it. Eddie Hearn has been comparing it basically as well to PBC. They came out with their cards. It was like Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman, Amir Khan, triple headers on like NBC. It's just insane. Like the difference, I think, in caliber from what PBC first put out, and obviously the vitriol they got, and then the DAZN, and they're putting out their product, and obviously I think the response it should be getting for this card. Now the October 20th card, which we're gonna get to, I think is much better, especially if they move that Katie Taylor fight to it. We're gonna get to that. But this October 6th card, as their sort of rollout of Matchroom USA for DAZN, not the great. It just isn't. It's not good. Vargas Dulorme is uninteresting. Like, I think it's a respectable matchup, to be honest, but I think it's just no one cares about that fight. Like, people barely care about Jesse Vargas, and people really have never cared about Thomas Dulorme. People shit on him in Terrence Crawford's resume when we talk about Terrence Crawford, so this is just ridiculous. Jared Miller versus Thomas Adamek. Oh my God, this is just so bad. And again, this is just a step back for Joe Miller. And I know Eddie Hearn's reason was Thomas Adamek is ranked higher, but come on, fam. Like, are we really going through this dog and pony show? It's not good. Like, it just, all these fights are mismatches in some capacity. I think the Daniel Roman Gavin McDonald fight, while interesting in some way, is not a card that you roll out an entire network basically on. I know Anthony Joshua Povetkin is technically the first Matchroom card for DAZN. But again, for us U.S. fans, that doesn't matter for us. We were thinking about Matchroom USA, obviously, because that's the big move, right? That's the big change in the industry, is Matchroom USA with DAZN in the U.S. This isn't it. This is not the rollout. Let's be honest. The boxing is saying Eddie should try to make Hooker versus Granado, especially with Granado saying he wants to be at 140. I think that's a fun matchup. But again, you know, and Eddie, I think, kind of alluded to this in the interview with Ness, is that, like, hopefully these guys go and tell their boxing friends who are bigger stars, hey, I'm being treated right over here. And he gets the Dannys, the Mikeys, the Earls, the Charlos. You know, like, that's what you're sort of hoping for here. But yes, first Matchroom USA, DAZN card, not the greatest. Not the greatest at all. And I think that the big sticking point, I think, for a lot of people is the Jared Miller versus Adamek fight. Let alone the Vargas Dulorme, that being the main event, because I think that is ridiculous in and of itself, and that's just laughable compared to the main events, let's say PBC put on, which were championship fights. They put in the championship fights in the, you know, the undercard for this one. That's because their champions aren't big names. There aren't people that can pull numbers. PBC were able to do that. It was Danny Garcia versus Robert Guerrero. It was Keith Thurman versus Robert Guerrero. Rampage fans saying those guys would not leave Heyman. They don't have to leave Heyman. If you notice, Rampage fan, Go peep out that interview with Ness and Eddie, because I've been saying it a lot. It's a great interview. Eddie's tone about Al Heyman has shifted drastically, in my opinion. I think they are. I think they hit a rough patch, to be honest, in their relationship. I think they were not getting along that great, probably business wise. But the way Eddie talks about Al right now, it seems like, especially with the AJ and Wilder negotiation being, I think, a personification of Heyman and Eddie and their beef, in a sense. Eddie is saying that Heyman's on his side trying to get it done. And if that's true, or at least in theory, if they are getting along, then I believe the idea that Heyman can't work with Eddie, I think that's ridiculous. I think Heyman works with promoters. Eddie's a promoter. You can work with them. Go collect the biggest bag. If it's not Showtime, maybe it's DAZN. Go collect the biggest bag. I'm always for fighters getting the biggest check they can. Especially if it's one-offs, which especially that's what it kind of sounds like Eddie wants to do. A lot of one-offs. Similar to, let's say, obviously, Heyman doing time buys with all these different networks. He's sort of the reverse. He's the network trying to pay license fees for all these fights and pick them up. And he's sort of working as the face of DAZN. So I think, I don't think these fighters need to leave Heyman to go to DAZN, or at least to make fights with these fighters. Make the best fights, let's be honest. The boxing is saying, no disrespect, but Vargas isn't a world beater. Dulorme is a good fight for him. No, that's why I think I prefaced it with Vargas Dulorme is actually a competitive fight. Probably the best word is competitive. But in no way, shape, or form is it interesting. And in no way, shape, or form should it be the main event to your rollout debut U.S. card on a debut network. Like, that just isn't good. Ellie saying, look, first card isn't great, but if you look at the month as a whole, it should be okay. Look, I'm getting DAZN. They got World Boxing Super Series. They got Bellator. They have me sold. I am good. But this card is not good. Objectively, this card is not a good card in any way, shape, or form. There might be good highlights here and there, but it's not a good card. Let's be honest. And just because the month is good doesn't mean that it makes this card better. That's not what we're talking about here. There's no magic where, because Bellator and World Boxing Super Series are popping off that month, makes this card all of a sudden, boom, be amazing. And the Billy Joe Saunders, Demetrius Andrade fight on October 20th, that all of a sudden, boom, makes this amazing. No, that just doesn't happen here. This card just is objectively a bad card. There is, like, even the Better Be Callum Johnson fight is not a good fight. Rampage fan saying, I like you, Rampage fan, saying they need to bring K1 to DAZN. That'd be awesome. Or Glory. I'd be down with Glory. Which reminds me, Kyle, I know Kyle may be listening somewhere. When's Glory this weekend? Let me know. And what network it's on. I forget.